When Mega Man X first released in the 90s on Super Nintendo, it is the same equivalence to Sonic becoming Super Sonic, or when you first saw Goku become a Super Saiyan when he was facing Frieza. This was a monumental push for this franchise. Mega Man, a franchise that started in the 80s, that was mostly just exclusive to Nintendo, obviously by Capcom, the GOATs. They really created this game that it was so fun. Mega Man classics are always going to be amazing, but the jump from Mega Man to Mega Man X was hands down the most insane thing that we had ever seen. All the upgrades you can grasp onto, the bosses, the soundtrack, and what it did. And this was also in an era where all these games were really jumping to this platform. Now, when I mean this platform, is from the regular Nintendo going into the Super Nintendo. Games like Super Mario World, to this day, one of the best games in history. Not just best Nintendo games, one of the best games in history, Super Mario World. Then you had Super Metroid, which jumped from the original Nintendo Metroid to Super Metroid. So Mega Man X is kind of that variation of that. When you think of Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country. When you saw Donkey Kong Country on Super Nintendo, it was a dynamic move from just the OG Donkey Kong that we're all used to when you saw like Mario versus Donkey Kong and all of that. Even from the OG Mario games, the original brothers, and then you get all the way 2 and 3. But Super Mario World took those to these were all games that were on roids. They were performing amazing, at least at the time. This jump was huge. A lot of Super Nintendo games, somehow, I don't know if they sat in a circle or what they did these days, but they're like, we're gonna take these games to the next level, along with the console graduating within itself. So such a massive leap in that, and Mega Man X was part of that franchise that really was something. We just got to start off with the soundtrack. The soundtrack of Mega Man X by far is so incredible. The way they deliver it is like the composing, the delivery, the tempo of it. I have so much fun when I play this game. By far, it led to being one of the greatest series, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when the music was delivering, then you have this incredible action and things you can attain to when you get newer mechanics, newer skills, newer capabilities, newer abilities, and even later down the series, you can get actual reused Hadouken. Like from your cannon, right? You get the Hadouken, and that's crazy, man. Mega Man was by far one of the coolest franchises I had ever seen. Now, they did have some rocky essences in the X series, but X2 and X3, I would say, are pretty, even X4. It's so hard to follow up Mega Man X, the OG, or at least OG in Super Nintendo terms, right? When you're thinking the X series. OG Mega Man is way before. But Mega Man X, by far, when it was an advancement that we had not seen before, and the graphics looked amazing. And all y'all probably laughing like, what the hell? Like, graphics, what do you mean? At the time, the graphics were like, it shocked the world on how this platformer can be this well attained, having a whole, it was a replenish, it was a revamp, and we thought that there would be maybe like a continuation of Mega Man. Instead, it was just so much of everything, of like the way games are remastered today, or just even revamped or rebooted, right? That's how Mega Man X was, and I feel it's still to this day is not talked about enough, like how much of a legendary game this is. Mega Man X going into X2, X3, and even X4. I feel you could even definitely X5 for sure, but X2, X3, X4, those are hard follow-ups to the actual Mega Man X, which still to this day sets the best foundation of a game, and it has the right mixture of like how hard the game actually is and someone who can try to pick it up with ease. Basically easy to pick up, hard to master in Mega Man X. And I feel they did that in a great way, because it really helps you respect everything and the deliverables of the game in totality. Now, Metroid is known for being really hard, but Mega Man X is extremely difficult also. So when you play Mega Man X and you go into X2, X3, X4, X5 is like definitely up there with higher talks. I think it's either X6 or X7 is where they definitely, it's where it starts kind of falling off in terms of what people really liked most. I know I believe it was X7 where people didn't really like as much. Me for one, I like, as far as all the Super Nintendo series, I love it. Like if you get the Mega Man X collection, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Play the Mega Man X collection if you have it. But I don't want to spoil anything in terms of story. I just want to tell you like just graphics and how it really just was so monumental to it. And so like with X7, people, it found its way when it came back to X8 is what I would say, I guess, to conclude everything. But when you go into X6, X7, it gets real shaky around there. X8 for sure is when it found itself, but that's where it was led to a facet of, is it too little too late? Now this was years down the line already, and there had been some shaky moments in terms of like all the sequels and everything. That's a long ass series, by the way. That's an 8-game series right there. That's a long series, and you still got like Zero and everything still got to get involved. And so when they got into 8 goes back to its roots of how basically Mega Man X is. But the component to what X8 was versus actually OG X, just Mega Man X, Super Nintendo X, is like, man, you are like, okay, cool. You notice that this was the blueprint. Now, X2, like what I said, was a great follow-up for sure. And 3, I'll give them 3. It's so hard to even really rate these games. If you look at rankings to this day, people are going to put Mega Man X at the top of the line. Because it was one, obviously you give it that actual nostalgia release and that component of like, it gets bonus points. It was the first time we have ever seen it. We're like, oh shit, like this is crazy. But also because it set such a tone that was so next level. That's why when I mentioned earlier, right, like when Goku first turned Super Saiyan, it was, those are the moments that you like really, the first time for everything are always going to be in cultural. Like just for the culture, you gotta put it at top ranking because it's like, whoa, this is crazy, you know. But I still think it's probably the best Mega Man game of all time, to be honest, because of how they did it. When you play the stages, when you excel in the stages, the uniqueness, it reminds me a lot of like what Sonic did with Sega. Sonic is known for a lot of the immersion of the music, along with the actual execution of bosses and story, while just being a 2D platformer that's easy to pick up, hard to master, right? There's a lot of, but now a lot of platformers were like that, but it wasn't necessarily just a Metroidvania type game like Metroid Prime or any other Metroidvania games. No RPG involved or anything like that. Comes some progressions, right? You can pick up some stuff, especially later down the line with the X series, but definitely no RPG elements. You just kind of grasp onto skills, and every time you beat a boss, you're gonna get a skill, and you acquire other skills as you later get into the game. And X is so cool, right? Like from Chameleon to Penguin to everyone. And I think that if I were to really place a top Super Nintendo game of all time, it has to be Mega Man X. What Mega Man X did for everyone, especially back in these times in the 90s, it being a game that actually launched in the 80s, was such a drastic jump that can really set the tone of what gaming was, especially in a game that was heavily equipped with platformers, alongside going with their rivals like what I mentioned earlier, like Sonic over there at Sega, right? Nintendo and Sega were going to wars at these times. And for Mega Man to kind of just be in there, right? There's games like Mega Man, maybe like Kirby. There's a couple of other games like 2D platformers that were like Earthworm Jim that were kind of in there that get really underneath that whole Mario, Sonic, Metroid, you know what I mean? Mega Man X does have a big fan base though, so I'm not gonna put it way like in that B-list underrated, but I feel like it's a lower A component when people don't really do the research and understand how monumental Mega Man was. Without spoiling any stories, you can just get all these collections for very, very cheap. Please get into these games. But for sure, I will let you know that Mega Man X is definitely a game that you would want to invest some time into if you still haven't played it up until this day. If you're a newer audience, or if you're my OG audience can help out and comment. If you're newer and you've never played like these types of games, get the Mega Man X collection, try it out, and trust me, you're gonna love everything about the game. From dashing, all the cool skills that you learn, everything that you acquire, how fast it is, the music on all of the Mega Man X games are incredible, but X just makes it so legendary, man. But yeah, y'all let me know what's up. I appreciate y'all, man. Play it. Get into Mega Man X. I really, really recommend it. Peace.